Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest. He is Kyle Wilken, who heads his own landscaping company, Prestige Property Improvements, LLC, and welcome aboard, Kyle. Okay, and what you
Thanks,
do,
Blaine.
Kyle?
Happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you. And by the way, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So hopefully they're listening as well. I see we're recording, so we're in good shape. And Kyle, I know a lot about you, excepting for the fact that we have you as our landscaper, and we're very happy with you. But you're, as you call it, a young entrepreneur here in Asheville, where you were born and raised. And you're actually, I don't speak to too many people, but you were my second guest. You were actually born in Asheville?
Yes, sir. I was born at the Mission Hospital and grew up in Arden.
Okay, because that's kind of a rarity. You speak to somebody who had actually been born and raised in Asheville, and Kyle's also a graduate of Appalachian State University. He has a young family, and I know you just had your second addition to that family, a little baby girl. Is that correct?
Baby boy. Our
Baby
first
boy,
was a
sorry.
girl, but
That's it.
that's
Okay.
all right.
Just checking on you, make sure you knew. And
Yeah.
the question I always ask people is that, I know you as a landscaper, and how did you get into that field? In other words, you grew up, you said, in this area. When you were a little kid, did you always know you wanted to be a professional landscaper?
I did not. I actually I didn't want to be. There's my stepdad has his own landscaping business, and so I grew up working with him and learning a lot about it. And so I knew that I didn't want to do that, but because of the experience I learned, it just kind of started to make sense for me, and I enjoy doing it now.
Okay, but that's an interesting story. So as a kid, you probably at one point in time, it's like a friend of mine, Kyle, he grew up on a farm, dairy farm, and same kind of experience as you. He had to get up at 5:30 every morning, take care of the cows 365 days a year. And as soon as he graduated high school, he went into the service. He wanted nothing to do with it, but you've made a comeback now, and so you're back into landscaping. Is your stepdad still around?
Yes, he also has a business in the area.
Oh, a landscaping business as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we won't talk about him then, because we want to talk about your business instead. But you kind of had an interesting experience, I think in large part because of COVID, about how you got into starting your own firm. And what's that story?
Yeah, so I worked at a camp full time out in Weaverville, and I actually had this landscaping business on the side for about 2 years. And initially, I started this as kind of like a side gig to pay off my student loans. And thankfully, when I lost my job in August because of the pandemic, I had this business, it was pretty much ready to go full time. And so I just kind of transitioned into that.
Now, in terms of getting the background to the business, had you studied the business or landscaping at Appalachian?
I did not. I was a recreation management major, but I have taken a few like classes here and there.
In terms of starting your own business. And so
Yes,
what's it been like to start your own business?
I think you definitely can't expect it to be comfortable. There's a lot of days where it would be easy to quit, but thankfully you just kind of got to see through it and kind of know this vision that you have for it. So it's been, I would say, challenging. It's not difficult because it's benefited me, but challenging would probably be a good word for it.
Well, one of the things you've done too, which kind of impresses me, is that I know you as a landscaper and you take care of our lawn, very pleased with the work you do. But I think to your credit, you also broaden your business a little bit as well. And so I've seen some of your work. You just don't do landscaping. What else do you do as part of the business?
Yeah, so we kind of consider ourselves landscape contractors, and so we have this landscape business. That's what we do full time. We also have partnered up with some other companies who build fences or build decks, do power washing. And so we work directly with them to provide those services. But as far as Nick and I go, Nick's my business partner. We do the normal just lawn maintenance, but we also provide landscape maintenance, and that includes your beds and your bushes and hedges. But we also do a lot of stone work. We've done some awesome.
So how did you get into that? Into the stonework?
Nick actually has a lot of experience with stonework, and so when we partnered up, that was something that I kind of added to what we have to offer.
And so when you talk about stonework, give me an example of what kind of stuff you do.
Yeah, so we do a lot of flagstone patios, which they turn out beautiful. We had a couple who hired us to do a flagstone patio in their backyard for their wedding reception. So that was kind of cool to get to do that. But even just as filling driveways with gravel, or we do pavers. We just extended a driveway about 4 feet on each side with pavers, gray pavers, because the client wanted some more space in their driveway.
Do you have a preference as to what kind of work you do? Do you like the landscaping, the stone work? Do you have a preference?
I think Nick and I really enjoy mowing grass. We enjoy being able to show up to clients' homes regularly, because that's how we develop relationships with them. And so we feel like we have a little bit more of a purpose and connection when we get to see our clients more often. We enjoy the stone jobs here and there. We're thankful that we don't do them every week, but we do enjoy them. And those are the types of jobs where we kind of see through it, and then we're able to look back and be like, wow, this is beautiful.
Because I'll tell you something that, what I really enjoy? Having you and Nick come to my place and do the work. That's awesome.
We love seeing you.
Okay, but I love having you come here, so that means I don't have to do it. But you just gave me an idea, and I know we have an appointment coming up. And I really feel bad. You're laughing, but I really feel bad because, especially there was a lot of pollen and whatnot. If I had to send Cynthia out, to cut lawn, it would really bother me. So that's the kind of guy that would upset me. But you gave me an idea too. So I have this driveway, as you know, it's kind of this long driveway, and it's like gotten discolored, and we're going to need to power wash it or something. But Cynthia and I were just talking the other day. What's the difference between like the color of ours, and I could also blacktop it, or I could also do something else with that driveway, based on what you just said?
Yeah. So as far as I'm thinking about your driveway in my head and what we would do there. But yeah, there's several options. If you wanted to, cut out the driveway, I would not necessarily recommend that for you, just because I know how big your driveway is, and it's not in that bad of shape. But there's different options as far as paving it, or putting in pavers, or just power washing it to clean it up.
How often do you need to power wash a driveway or a house in general?
I would say if you have access to a power washer or someone who can do it, it's nice to do it yearly. You don't have to, but there's a big difference between power washing and pressure washing. Power washing is used more with a mixture of bleach and soap water, and you kind of are letting the chemicals eat up the algae and stuff, and then you're basically rinsing it. Whereas pressure washing is used with pressure, and most pressure washing companies prefer power washing.
Oh, do they? Is it easier, or?
I think it's safer for the house. There's more room for air with pressure, and it also takes a little bit longer. But also, just a little bit of bleach and soap water. I mean, if you just let it sit for a little bit, it'll take care of a lot of issues.
Okay. So back to not only our house, but other houses. You and I were talking off the air about my producer, Amy, and she was telling you she has a backyard where the grass doesn't grow well. And so I'm not too familiar with it, but I think you had mentioned initially to me is something called, what was it? The no
I believe the no-mow grass.
grass. What is that?
No-mow grass is something we recommend to clients a lot. You know, we get a lot of clients who can't grow grass, and so that's part of what we like to do is to try and help them figure out what to do. And so for shaded areas, half the time we can make it work with the 9-step like fertilization aeration program we do, but sometimes you have to go a different route, and no-mow grass is a good route a lot of the times, because it does better in shaded areas. It needs a little bit of sunlight, but unlike tall fescue, which is what, you know, normal yards have mostly in Western North Carolina, you know, it does a little bit better in the shade. And also once it grows to a certain point, you don't have to mow it. So you have to maintain it, you know, yearly. So it gets a little bit longer than what a normal yard would look like.
Are there people, again, such as myself, who don't like doing any of this stuff or like contracting it out? Are there other options? If somebody has a big yard or whatnot, I guess they could, I don't know if you handle it, they could get a goat, I guess would be another option. You know, I don't know if you have I could just see you and Nick offering a goat service as well.
Honestly, we should look into it.
Yeah, you know, not being so far-fetched, you could rent it out or, you know, lend them out for a week or a couple of days or something.
Right. And honestly, that's a good way to go organically. If you're wanting a big area that's overgrown, cleared out, I mean, that would be a good option.
Do you know people have goats?
I don't actually. My uncle had a goat when I was a kid, but he doesn't have it anymore.
Oh, okay. But anyway, it's just, you know, I'm trying to think what people have needs, for example, these services. And one of the things I always like about speaking to you and Nick, you always come up with our ideas for me. The drawback is that sometimes those ideas cost money, but it comes with the name of the game. How about another problem you and I have talked about, and we have, I think you started working on this, but we have moles, okay? And talk about what moles are and why they're a problem for some people.
Yeah, so moles feed on grubs, which grubs are a small pest that feed on grass. So your grubs are already destroying your grass, and then they're also attracting moles, which the biggest deal with moles is when they're in their yard. I'm sure everyone has seen, you know, the humps in their yard from moles walking through their yards. But really what that's doing is it's destroying the grass to be able to burrow its root down into the ground. So we use mole scram, which is, you can buy it. I don't know if you can buy it at like Lowe's, but the place we use in town is called Site One, and it has canola oil in it and garlic. So it actually doesn't, as much as possible, we try not to hurt animals or, you know, even grass and bushes and stuff. And so we're a fan of it. A lot of landscapers use it. And what it does is it actually provides an odor that the moles don't like. And so when it rains, it soaks into the ground, and you're supposed to start from one side of the yard and make your way across. And it actually makes them scram across the yard and to, you know, at your house, you have that field behind your house. So
yeah, I was gonna say behind the house wouldn't be bad, but to scram into the neighbor's house, they're not going to be so crazy, you know.
Right. It's moles are a hard deal, and we don't want to, you know, we try not to. Sometimes we have to do traps, but we try not to do that.
Well, the other problem, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, with moles is that it also makes the ground very like spongy and very soft when you walk on it. That's how you can tell if you have moles.
Right. Yeah. You see those tunnels, and then it also, I mean, you can tell when you're mowing if you don't have a good foundation for your grass. You know, the mowers aren't going to be able to have traction. And, you know, if there's any bit of a slope or if it's wet at all, and so you can kind of tell if there's moles or not. Or you can take a spade shovel and you can dig down about 8 inches, and you can see if you have grubs.
Now, you've actually, correct me if I'm wrong, you've actually started treating our house for moles?
We had, actually we had, we did your front yard.
Right. And so is that done, or you have to do that again in the spring?
So I think it has like a 60-day lasting effect. It kind of just depends, if those moles go and find something else, then, it could be longer, but occasionally you do have to do that, every so often until you get rid of them.
Because I imagine our yard is not completely atypical, but it seems parts of it are kind of tough to take care of because it's not like some of the other ones in Fairview. They're beautiful. It's big patches of uninterrupted land. Aside from in the back of the house, our front's very kind of choppy, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in the front.
Right.
So that's, I guess, a challenge for you folks a little bit, right? In terms of
a little bit. Also, there's some drainage off the road in your front yard that brings a lot of water down into your yard, and so that really there was a lot of moss, because moss thrives in shade and a lot of moisture, and moss will take over grass fairly quickly. And so part of creating a yard where you can mow and walk around in it and not slip in the mud is being able to get that grass to grow and have its roots get deep into the ground.
And that's, I know we're slated to have an appointment. You said it's going to be tomorrow, but because it's going to come up. But that's one of the things we want to talk about, to get rid of some of that water, or to do something with the water. You have some ideas on that?
Right. Yeah. So a lot of times we do like stone riverbeds, dry riverbeds. And instead of trying to barricade the water, block it, a lot of times we'll put in drains and, run it underground if we need to. But a lot of times you can redirect it and, send it whichever direction you need it to go. And that can help just keep the yard dry so you can have it, thrive.
Carl, one of the other things we want to talk to you about, and I guess as other people ask as well, but we want to have, flowers, and we kind of liked some of the flowers we had last year. Cynthia loves sunflowers, but we found they don't have much they don't live very long. Is that correct?
So what I would say is, if you were asking me this on the air, off the air, what I would say is, hey, let me give Nick a call, because Nick is our plant specialist. And so he would be able to talk to you about that. I know a lot about turf and pests and funguses, and then just the business part. Those are kind of my responsibilities. And then that's part of the reason why Nick and I partnered up, is because he has a lot of attributes that I don't have. And one of them is really knowing plants. And he's actually helping me learn, just like I'm helping him learn, which is awesome. But what I would say is, let me call Nick real quick and I'll be able to get you an answer.
Well, and I think that's planned. The two of you want to come out next week or something. We're going to talk.
Right. Yeah. We're pretty much together most of the time.
One of the things, I guess, and I'm admitting this is me, but, like having a nice yard, I want to have it this coming season with a little color in it, but I want to have it. And I think you know me enough. Well, you did something for me, which was great last year, that you told me I'd have to maintain it. And I said, well, I'm not going to be out there. So what did you do? You had a great way to get around that. I told you I didn't want to have to sprint, put water on it every day. And would you set up for me? You remember that would be done kind of automatically?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
explain what you did.
We have a process that it's pretty generic in this region. But we start in February with putting down pre-emergent so that the weeds don't come up. And then we'll spray a post-emergent in March to get rid of whatever weeds are there. And then we'll move into, we fertilize 3 times a year. We put down lime once or twice a year. We aerate, we overseed. And then we also treat like the moles and funguses as needed. And there's a few other things in there that I missed. But what we always tell our clients going into the fall, because that's when you're really treating the yard. You're putting down a starter fertilizer, you're putting down seed, and then you're aerating it, which a lot of, most people know what that is, but you're basically plugging holes into the ground so that way the ground can expand. And here it's very important because we have this hard clay ground. And so it doesn't give it's hard for the grass to continue to grow. And so to answer your question is, we always send out an email going into the fall, letting people know, hey, if you want dramatic results, we can do A, B, C, but we need you to help us out a little bit. And that includes cutting it at the right length, making sure your blades are sharpened, and also, which we cut your yard. We prefer to cut the yard so we can just take on that liability.
Well, I prefer ourselves. That too, by the way.
But the last thing is if you want dramatic results that year, it's got to be watered every day for a few weeks, at least a few weeks. And what you mentioned to me is, hey, like that's not going to work out for me, which is I was awesome. It was awesome that you were honest about that. And the good news is you can still do all those things, and over time, your fescue is going to start to take over. And so we're encouraging that fescue to grow, and we're discouraging weeds. And so over time, the process ends up working on its own.
But I think you also set up for us, correct me if I'm wrong, like a watering system where it automatic watering system that goes on and off, once a day or something. Didn't we talk about that? Or I think you did that.
Right. Yeah. So what we talked about is a timer.
Right.
You can get those at Lowe's for $25, and you literally just put it in the spout, and then you're putting your hose underneath it, and you can set how long you want it to come on and what time of day, how many times a week. And then you just have your sprinkler sitting in the yard. Obviously the other way would be putting in an irrigation system, which is more expensive. I would say a lot of people have them in Asheville, but a lot of people don't have them because it's not Florida where, you have to water it every day, right, or else you're going to have dead grass.
So, and by the way, that's another thing we'll talk about, or I think we talked about it last year, but now we'll be through our first season. That's the kind of thing I want to be done, that just the easier you make it for knowing me, other homeowners, the more I like it, so that's kind of cool. Yeah. What about other things, two other things, Kyle, in our remaining time here? One having to do with just general advice, kind of be listening, whether they use you, they do this on their own. Somebody wants to have a good lawn come this, it's coming up already, this, March, April, whatever. What should they be doing?
I would, if you don't know anything about it, I would get online, and you can research different treatments for this region, or you can call someone like myself, and we're happy to come out and talk with people. A lot of times we'll just give some advice and build that connection, and a lot of times we'll do the work for them. But I would say going into February, you're going to put down your pre-emergent, which is going to keep those. It actually puts off a gas underground, which confuses the weeds and makes the weeds think that it's a different time of year. So they're like, oh well, we don't need to sprout right now. We don't need to germinate. So it keeps them underground. But that's going to be the first step. And
so again, if people don't know how to do this, that's why they invented YouTube also, where they can just start researching some of this. What about another problem? We haven't talked about it, but crabgrass. What causes crabgrass?
So crabgrass does really well. What I've noticed is whenever there's drainage issues, that water comes rushing through and kills off any fescue that's there. And for whatever reason, crabgrass thrives there. I don't know much more about it. I do know that we use a selective herbicide to kill most weeds. I would say there's 100 different weeds that kills, but it does not kill crabgrass. But there is another herbicide that we use that's selective to crabgrass, and we found that kind of killing off that crabgrass creates space for whatever grass you do have to fill in.
And so that's something you deal with, or people have a problem with the crabgrass?
Yeah, we had, Nick and I actually had a lot of success with getting rid of crabgrass this year.
Okay. And so out of all the stuff you and Nick do, and we'll give a shout out, Nick, if you're watching or listening. Nick, last name is what again?
Erker.
Okay.
ERKER.
And he's your, what's a partner or guy you work with?
Yeah,
whatever?
we're business partners. We're in this together, and he like I said, he provides so much for this company.
How do you hook up with him?
So he's a family friend. I knew that he was looking for a new job, and I needed help at the same time, and so we kind of started dreaming about where we could kind of take this together, and it became a reality.
If somebody else is listening and they want to start their own business, give me maybe one piece of advice you'd give them, aside from see a psychiatrist.
No, this is my favorite question. I kind of view myself more of an entrepreneur, and then a landscape contractor second. And that's just because there's so much opportunity out there. And I'm 26 years old. I started my business when I was 24, I think maybe even 23. And what I would say is that there's so many things that people want to do, whether it's starting a business or just following their dreams. You can do it. And what's crazy is you're gonna kind of wake up each day and find reasons why you can't do it. But as long as you continue to do that, then you're going to find success. And Nick and I are still dealing with challenges, and that's part of it. But if I look back where I was 3 years ago, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing too, in the sense that you'd gotten laid off from this job. So it almost sounds to me almost like a blessing in disguise. Would you say that happened?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was hard for us. Katie and I just bought a house in July. I had insurance for my whole family for free. And we knew we were having a baby 3 months later. And so I got laid off in August, and we hadn't even paid our first mortgage yet. And so we were kind of, we didn't know what was going to happen. And here we are, 4 or 5 months later, and we're thankful. There's been so many opportunities, and we're excited about this year.
Anyway, I'm certainly excited for you as well. And Kyle, I'll ask you, if folks want to find out more about you, either the business or services you offer, what's the best way to find out?
Absolutely. You can text me. Can I give my phone number?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so my phone number is 828-606-2059. 828.
Well, repeat it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
828-606-2059. I also have a Facebook page, which I'm not sure if you can post that with this at all, but
oh, sure, you can mention it. How would they find you in Facebook?
Yeah, so you can get on Facebook. You can search Prestige Property Improvements LLC, and there should be a picture of me on the profile. And Nick and I post projects there all the time, and kind of different services that we're promoting.
Okay. And so Facebook, do you have a website?
We don't have a website right now, but I'm confident that this year we'll probably get to the point to where we'll create a website and get ourselves on Google.
That would be helpful. But keep in mind, as you're seeing, you don't absolutely have to have it, because I think with your Facebook page, which I've seen, I think you do a really good job on it. It shows the pictures and it's very visual.
Right.
So it used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people had to have a website. They spent lots and lots of money on it. And now it's almost like Yellow Pages. I don't know that people even go to websites as much as, if they're on Facebook or whatever. So anyway, Kyle, real pleasure speaking to you on the air. Look forward to, hopefully you and I will get together with Cynthia and Nick sometime next week maybe, and we'll talk some about these projects. And we'll look forward to seeing you in this coming year, which is going to be our best year ever. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Okay, Kyle, as always, pleasure. Speak to you soon. Thanks again. Okay. Okay, be well, buddy. And as my next guest works her way into the waiting room, I'm going to try to have Kyle disappear. And watch this trick. Kyle disappears. And Barry, before we have you, I introduce you, let me just mention that the station is WPVM, and our mission is to help foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, business, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website wpvmfm.org and look on the donate option on the right-hand side. It's next my pleasure to introduce Barrie Barton. And Barrie Barton is a career coach and facilitator and trainer, among other things. And Barrie, before I talk about the other things, you can say hello to all your fans and friends on Facebook.
Hello.
So,
hello, fans on Facebook.
Okay, you can wave to them as they're all looking at you.
Hi.
And Barrie's introduction, and I've certainly known Barrie a bunch of years, is, as she says, whether delivering a speech, pitching a potential clients, or performing your authentic stories, Barrie Barton is dedicated to the art and strategy of personal and professional engagement, communication, and presentation. The clients have titled Barrie, I love this title, as a speaking whisperer, I have to get that message spelunker, word distiller, and performance polisher. I love that. What's a, by the way, just an aside, what's a message spelunker? What's that?
Spelunking is what cave divers do. They go sort of deep into the heart of a cave. That's called spelunking. So we go, when I'm working with clients, helping to develop a speech or some kind of presentation, I help them kind of dive into what is it that they really want to say? What is the true message that they're looking to express to an audience, to move an audience, to inform an audience? Because so often what happens with speakers is that they want to hand over everything. Not just speakers. I mean, I've worked with architects, I've worked with engineers. They think that they have to share everything with their audience. And the truth is that actually the less that you share, and if you can really hone it down, really distill it down to its most essential components, that is what is going to make the greatest impact on your audience, and you're not going to bore them. So where they're going to just, turn you off. So that's what a message spelunker is.
The name of the book is escaping me, but you probably know it. But it's a great book I read years ago of a guy who talks about 8-minute speeches, and he talks about 8-minute speech and then allow 7 minutes for discussion, question, and answer. But you don't have to have 3-hour speeches, or 6-hour speeches.
Right.
If you get a message across in 8 minutes, not bad. Barrie will help you do that. She's a speaking coach with Stand and Deliver Asheville, adjunct faculty at UNCA, teaching public speaking, artistic director of story choreography projects. Each of these roles, Barrie's main goal is to empower, guide, and inspire her clients to reach their clients' potential. Barrie can help you transform your unique ideas into a message that matters and confidentially claim your ability to engage, speak, and read. And Barrie, the question, I maybe asked you this in the past, but I'll ask you this again. When you grew up, you said in Asheville. I know you're an Asheville native.
I am an Asheville native.
And this, I have to tell you, Barrie, I think it's the first time I've ever done a show with 2 Asheville natives. My first guest was from Asheville.
Right.
You to actually be born in and lived in Asheville most of your life. When you were a little girl growing up in the Asheville area, did you always know you wanted to be a message spelunker and word distiller? Was that your goal in life, to be this speaking guru?
Actually, no. In fact, my language, what I wanted to be, what I became, was a dancer.
Right.
So my language was through my body, and I spent the majority of my younger, teenage and 20s into my 30s silent. You dancers don't get up on stage and talk about their dances. It's just the curtain opens and you move. The music goes on and you move. So this bridge to the verbal is it's been an interesting transition, and the midway bridge, really the bridge that helped me cross into this, was when I created story choreography projects, which was in 2006. And that was a time as a choreographer, I was in a place where I wanted to start experimenting, just playing around with different ideas that I had never done before. And so I started to put together story with movement. And then I started creating these performances, these, I guess you would call it authentic theater, just normal people, not actors and dancers, finding their stories, thematic stories, and then putting a major production on at the Diana Wortham Theater. And that was the beginning of the transition for me then into shifting from, so here I am helping people find their stories, spelunking for their stories, finding the confidence to stand up in front of an audience. One of our performances, actually, we almost sold out the Diana Wortham Theater.
I remember.
2 nights in a row.
Well, now, was that the first time you ever produced story choreography for an audience?
That was the first one, was in 2006.
Yeah.
At the Diana Wortham Theater.
Because to your credit, you surely didn't start small. I couldn't believe this, that they have this major production. And it was just, I'm trying to think, when we moved here, I know the first one, the second one, how many productions did you do at Diana Wortham?
I did 5.
Yeah, but just, it's hard to describe, but I've been blessed in that my wife, Cynthia, has been in a bunch of your productions.
Right.
And it's just such a marvelous thing to not only see, but I was never in production, but for the people themselves, as Cynthia says, she's not an actor, she's not a performer, she's never done this kind of thing. And most of the people have not done this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And somehow you get them up singing, dancing, performing, telling stories.
Right.
And they love it. The
Right.
only disappointment, Barrie, I'll share with you if I can, is that they'd love you to do more of them. And I know every year you're so amazing that Barrie says, this is going to be my last one. Unfortunately, it's not your last one, because it's a bit of work, would you say?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It really is. But if you think about that, these people that don't have any background in acting or moving or anything like that, most people, like, I'm going to go back to my architects and engineers, they don't have speaking training either, but they are required to present their plans. They are required to pitch their architectural plan to a potential client. And so it's the same thing, really, of giving that person, that engineer, that architect, the confidence, the tools, the joy, even a little, maybe even some joy of, yeah, you can do this. You can take your ideas, you can take your brilliance and communicate it to an audience, and then they'll pay you. They'll hire you.
It must be very exciting for you as a teacher to see somebody start at ground level 0, and never done it. And I guess, it's supposedly infamous. One of the greatest fears, if not the greatest fear, is public speaking. But for you to take somebody at ground level 0 and get up where they can actually deliver a presentation.
Yeah.
How do you get past that? In other words, I'm sure one of the very first things you're told is that people are nervous. They don't want to give a presentation. Sure. I imagine you hear that from time to time. Would you say that's true?
Yeah.
How do you help somebody get beyond that?
Well, I'm going to share first the way that I help people get beyond in the delivery department.
Right.
The delivery department, what I encourage my clients to do is to develop, especially those folks that are required to lead meetings or do presentations or do pitches on a regular basis, is to develop a 2-minute pre-performance little routine where they're warming up their body, they're warming up their voice, they're shaking out their nervousness. They're listening to music that maybe gets them their blood going and their excitement, their passion going. There's all kinds of different methods to how to get yourself mentally and physically and vocally ready to be in front of a group of people. So I encourage that, because you think about dancers, actors, musicians, athletes, anybody that gets in front of an audience does some kind of warm up.
Well, it's funny. Let me just jump in there, because again,
sure.
I hadn't been familiar with that until a couple of years ago. I was in a couple of very small parts and plays, but just what you said, I'd never seen that before. There's this whole warm up, and they clap and they cheer and they sing sometimes. And it's kind of fun, but it does, I guess, get you into it a little bit.
It does, yeah. I mean, if you read about Stephen Colbert, he has a whole ritual he does before he goes on TV. So that's an important thing. So I teach that as part of my trainings, to encourage people to develop a 1 minute, 2 minute, whatever it is that works for them.
So even as an individual, you should be doing this. So if you're getting in a show.
Yeah. Definitely, yes. And so it can help you relax. It can help you release your nervousness, or just get you kind of excited about presenting, and then that energy comes through the camera or it comes across the stage.
And we're going to set you up for the next question, because I kind of know where you'll take the question, but other people probably have a concern that how are they going to memorize all this? They're going to speak for 20 minutes, and do they have to memorize everything? And talk a little bit about that, Barrie.
Yeah, so the pre-performance is for the delivery piece.
Right.
The way that I like to help my clients in terms of the content is to, so first of all, I do not encourage the memorization. What I do encourage is to create what I call a map. So I help my clients create a speaking map. So it will lead them from one area of their speech to the next. And so basically what they can do is, after they've familiarized themselves with what they're going to say, is all they have to do is sort of eye their framework, their map, and then that makes it even gets them set up to remember what section comes next.
And I assume, by the way, in talking about the map, I assume you don't want people to write out the whole speech.
Well, I actually do encourage.
But when they have it in front of them,
not in front of them. No,
exactly, yeah.
It's an initial exercise,
right?
So that they hear their language, they hear their phrasing, they can put their ideas. I really do encourage people to actually write out what they want to say. But
exactly,
I also encourage them not to write it first, speak it into a voice memo, and then transcribe it to the paper, because writing is different than speaking. So you have to get the oral rhythm, the rhythm of your speaking voice, and then transcribe that to paper, and then look at the paper at what you said, and then organize it.
But I also see the value of what you're saying. You also get the value of having to listen to it also. So it's the speaking, the writing, and the listening.
Yes.
I guess that reinforces it. But again, back to you. It must be such an exciting thing for you to see somebody who starts off with you, had never spoken for 30 years, or you have some people, I guess, who have never done a speech before.
Most haven't done a speech.
Yeah, and so that must really be exciting when they come in having never done that, and to actually do a presentation. I mean, it's smiling to think about it. It must be terribly liberating. I mean, for Cynthia, had never before really been in front of a group, never danced, never sang, never told a story. And you had her and 30 other people, 20 other people at a time doing that. Very exciting stuff. By the way, before I forget it, do you have a story project coming up for the spring?
I don't have a story choreography project for the spring. We did two virtual workshops this past fall, which were actually, it certainly wasn't ideal, but it worked, and I had a really good turnout for those. So I'm going to wait until we can actually get together. So it'll probably be in the fall.
Okay, because again, it's just something that I'm speaking not only for Cynthia, but for everybody who takes it. And I think you see the success of it, Barry, that so many people who participate in one of these projects come back over and over. You know, you have, it's just, I'll just encourage people, follow Barry's, and we'll have to tell you how to get in touch with her. And if she's doing one of these projects, either participate in it or go to it, you'll be pleasantly surprised. And that kind of segues into what you just said, Barry, the fact that you did a lot of these performances, had people do these performances, and right now you're not doing that, but even your speaking training has changed a little bit. In other words, one of the things you do, and I think you do it very well, is you go out and speak, work with different groups on different presentations. And so you've had to, I guess, over the last, not unfortunately 9 months now, move that business from in person to virtual.
Right.
What's that been like for you?
So honestly, when COVID first hit, I had just arrived back home from Virginia Beach doing a 2-day training with a company. And it's when it, you know, when we got the lockdown notice, I really thought I'm done. I really could not fathom how this could be. I couldn't imagine it. It just was completely something that my brain just could not see or create. So I actually signed up for a training with a company that I've been kind of watching and reading and admiring for probably ever since I started doing Stand and Deliver. I signed up for this training. It was the best decision I ever made, because what I got to see, I learned a tremendous amount, first of all, but also I got to watch 2 facilitators do a brilliant job at leading an audience through this training.
And this training people to do this virtually? Was that the training?
Yes, it was a virtual training to help us learn how to be better on virtual, interactions. So after that training, it was just like, I took off and developed a training called Elevate Your Impact, Engage, Speak, and Lead, and have presented it to an architect company, and they are getting ready to recontract with me because it was so successful. There's a way to train and teach in the virtual platform that is very different than in person, and you have to reorient, you have to restructure how you organize your teaching and your leading in the virtual platform.
And talk a little bit about that, Barry, because I was fortunate to be able to I didn't take the whole program, but I took a course with you on virtual presentations and using Zoom. And so I took the course like you. I had no idea that, hey, there are some things you could do to make it more enjoyable, more informative, more enlightening for your participants.
Yeah.
Don't give the whole course away, but the name of that particular course that's the first one you offer. What is that called?
Yeah, it's called Elevate Your Impact.
Right. And rather than share everything with it, could you maybe just tell, I'll give you a sneak preview of maybe like one idea that people can learn if they're on a Zoom call or Zoom presentation that they should be doing when they're doing such a presentation. You have one idea you can share?
I think one idea is, and you may remember we did this, is to have, if you're teaching something, is to find a mini storytelling prompt. So I think I brought up, think about you're a teacher or a mentor, right. Somebody that really impacted your life. Bring that person to mind, and then bring to mind what impact did they have? What lesson did you learn from them? How did they change the trajectory of your life? And then each person shared a little mini story about that person. Well, the purpose of that, telling that story, was to show you and to show everybody on the training how one person impacted your life, and that you have the capacity to be doing the same for others.
And what I loved about that, that was one of the things I got from that session. One of the things I loved about it, Barry, was you showed me that you didn't have to do the same old, meaning that every other workshop, just like I did with you and the previous guest, well, what do you do? And, talk about, and you hear it, you don't really listen to it. But those stories, you're right, it was a 30-second or a minute story. They were really good,
Yeah.
And but it was so much, I enjoyed it, I really did, because it was something, I learned something within a very short period of time about the other people in it. It was something, but it wasn't the same old,
Right.
So you took an out that, I should revisit that, because you took what could be a very boring, dull kind of introduction thing.
Yeah.
And because I guess also the point is everybody has some sort of story they can share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what you did so well on it, you also guided us that you just didn't say, well, think of any story. You just said, hey, specifically, think of a teacher and share a story about the teacher. I love that. So when you take a Zoom, not so much take a Zoom workshop with Barry, but when you take that particular course, there are other things you can do as a presenter to make Zoom presentations come alive.
Yeah, engagement, and you want to engage with the audience, get them to be giving you feedback, and that can be, of course, through the chat. It can be through, the breakout rooms are a great. I mean, I did that a lot with my story choreography project, virtual workshops, getting folks into breakout rooms, having smaller conversations, building. And you can't do this so much in a webinar, but I like to have small groups, small training groups. I think there is something so beneficial about creating a sense of connection and community. I did that as a dance educator when I was a school teacher. The climate of a classroom, the climate of a group really, really matters to how much we learn, how much we enjoy our learning, and how much we feel seen and heard. For ourselves, and how much we're willing to see and hear other people. So it's a powerful thing when you think about really creating a sense of community alongside any kind of training.
I think, Barry, you said one of the keys to the whole process, and you used, it's a great word to use, enjoyment. That I guess both for the teacher, you were the facilitator, and the audience, they should be enjoying it. If they're not, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And you gave a great example, this workshop you went to, and you've been doing workshops for a lot of years.
Yeah.
But that, my God, you could even learn from it. Can you imagine?
Yeah. And I think another thing on virtual platforms, and probably in person too, is to shift gears. Do something where you're doing a storytelling thing, and then shift over to where I might be being more directive to you or teaching you something, and then having you write some ideas down on a piece of paper, and then having you go into a breakout room. So you're constantly shifting gears and focus and your learning style. So you might be taking in information, you might be sharing a story, you might be writing, you might be listening, constantly shifting that focus, learning avenue or something like that.
Barry, I know that's one of the programs that you offer through the virtual environment. I know there are two others. We don't have a lot of time. Yeah. What's the second one you offer?
So coming up this year, I will be doing a workshop. It's called Craft a Speech Worth Sharing, which I had planned to do last year, but it didn't happen. And this is really about helping you develop a speech. So it's called Craft a Speech Worth Sharing. I'll be offering that two or three times in the coming year.
If folks take that, they'll learn how to do a speech. How long are the speeches?
They will learn how to create their own speech. So it's content based. It is not delivery based.
Right.
It is simply, what do you want to say? How do you want to say it? How are we going to organize it? What facts, what quotes, what stories do you want to implement?
And how long are these stories typically?
How long are the workshop?
No, the story that they create. How long is
it? Depends on their speech.
Okay.
Yeah. It could be a 1 minute story, or it could be a 3 minute story. Depends on their content, their audience, their theme, like all of that.
And talk, Barry, if you would, because that's one of your strengths, I think, about the fact that whatever you're doing, if you bring in stories, it's going to make it a lot more interesting. How important are stories to people's, speeches?
Well, I think stories humanize content. They humanize information. And I think they also allow the audience's mind to settle in and be more in that receptive mode. We can connect with the theme of the story, the experiences of the story, and because maybe it's happened to us, or we know someone that it happened to, or we just connect at a human level to an experience that the speaker is talking about. It also helps the speaker become more human, because very often they seem a little inaccessible, or they seem kind of up on that stage. And when a speaker starts sharing a story, all of a sudden they kind of open themselves and blossom, and or show their vulnerability, or show a mistake they made in their life, or some whatever the story is. There really is, they're the secret sauce, I think, to a lot of speeches.
What about using humor in a speech?
I am not. That is not my. That is not my forte, personally. So I don't know how to. I don't know how to teach that one.
Okay,
I'm not the person to
but I
come.
ask you for a reason, and the point is, and
Yeah.
I'll let you talk about this too. If you can use humor, if you can use it well, fine.
Yeah.
But I guess the point I'm asking you to say rather than me is, I guess you teach people not to force humor, or you've been to too many presentations.
Yeah.
And so let me start off with a joke. And I guess that's perhaps the worst thing you could do is telling people you haven't a joke.
Yeah.
So it should be, if you can incorporate it, fine. But if you can't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
And Barry, I'll let you talk about, so we talked about two of the programs you're offering this spring. What's the third one?
So the third one is as a speaker, it's called The Art of Speaking. So that will follow the craft of speech worth sharing. So for those people that then want to take the speech that they created and then learn how to deliver it, then the Art of Speaking will be also offered 2 to 3 times this coming year.
And these will all be offered virtually and not tied into a company presentation.
It'll be virtual probably up until July, and then I'm really hoping in the fall to offer some courses in person, in a nice large space where we still feel safe, and there's lots and lots of social distancing available.
And we've seen some people are starting to finally do that or try that a little bit. But can you imagine we'll actually do a presentation in front of people? Because we talked earlier about Zoom. But as good as Zoom is, I would imagine you, especially of all people, probably miss the belly to belly, the in person.
I do so much. I really do. I can read body language. I can pick up things that I just cannot pick up in this environment. A little bit I can, but I can really tune into people's energy, their tone, their body language in person. And that tool has had to sit on the shelf for the last year, which has been very kind of sad for me.
But again, to your credit, I think it's great that you brought in some of these other programs. And at least you were saying, at least you're starting to do that. And that probably is very exciting. Probably even just the developing of the programs was kind of fun, probably for you.
It was. It taught me a lot. It really did teach me a lot about distilling it down to basic stuff, keeping it simple, moving it forward, lots of momentum in a virtual training.
Barry, if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, either website, Facebook, what's the best way to find out about Barrie Barton?
Probably the best place to reach me is, of course, you can private message me on Facebook or LinkedIn. But my website is standanddeliverasheville.com, and it's all spelled out, every single letter.
Okay, and Barrie Barton is also Barrie.
That is it.
Barton. I'd like to thank you for being my guest this second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. Barry, as always, a pleasure.
Thanks,
also thank Kyle Wilkin, my guest the first half hour, and to also thank Amy Prisonage, my producer. And hopefully we'll see you folks next week here at WPVM Wednesday at 9 a.m. You can also check us out on WPVM's Facebook page. We hope to speak to you in person, Barrie, real soon.
All right.
Be
All
well.
right.
Thanks an
Take
awful
care,
lot.
Bye-bye.
Okay, be well.